Alrighty, at the end of my Labor Day weekend, what I was hoping to be a highly productive weekend didn't turn out to be so good, but I'll get to that. The TA is fully assembled, the new clutch disc in the TA here, and there's a new clutch disc in my main chassis clutch. The pressure plate was cleaned up at work, resurfaced. The fly was resurfaced as well. Helped even it out a little bit because it was warped a little bit. Checked the TA and it was pretty good. On one of the fingers on my main pressure plate here, my chassis, the cotter pin had fell out of it, and that little pin that holds the finger where it pivots had actually worn. I put a new cotter pin in it, and we'll see if it'll work, but I really didn't want to spend, I think, like $350 for that kit for the whole clutch there, and then like another $175 or $200 for the TA clutch kit. I just really want to get it back together right now. I've already got quite a bit of money wrapped up in this thing. I just want to get back up and going so I at least get it running right now. I can always tear it apart, redo the clutches later. But when I actually do this, this will be ripped back apart. The TA will be rebuilt, new pressure plate, and whole kit. Whole clutch kit in the TA, whole clutch kit for the engine. So I mean, everything is going to get rebuilt on this again anyway. I just want to get back together for now. And at least I'll have a spare clutch disc for the TA. I got my brakes all assembled. Basically, there's a shaft right here and there's a bearing on it held on by a snap ring. This side, took a snap ring off, new bearing on it, seal, threw it together, O-ring, everything on the plate there. This one, I went to pull the snap ring off the bearing and realized there's about 3/4 of an inch of my snap ring missing. It had broke off. And for right now, I mean, for all the more it takes to pull this back out of there, I wasn't worried about it. I just cleaned up the bearing good, lubed it up, and threw it back together. I can always grab that snap ring later. I got all new hardware in here, but I'll explain why. I went and got new hoses made for my fuel system here. They're actual fuel hoses and not hydraulic hoses. I can actually get them to flex around the corner. It was the main thing before. It was so stiff that I couldn't get them to flex around the corner into here. So now I got a nice flexible fuel hose I can do stuff with. So this is all bolted. The valve cover, I had it removed. I checked all my valve gaps, and the guy I got this from said it didn't run very well, like it had a mist to it and stuff like that. Well, I think part of the problem is on the last valve here, I had a clearance of probably at least 60 thousandths. So, I mean, that wasn't very good. And then the one right beside it, I think it was, or the one up from it, didn't have any gap at all. It was tight all the time. I had to loosen it quite a bit to even get a gap. And then some of them were 30 thousandths, and it's all over the place. So I don't know how they set these gaps before. Like I said, I have nothing. I had 30 and I had at least 60 in there. I stuck my 14 in there and it dwarfed it. I moved it around. I think the biggest one of my set was 35, and that only took up about half the gap. So pretty big gap in there. Took the radiator down to the radiator shop locally here. So I just had a leak in it, wanted the leak fixed so I can get my tractor put back together. And he came back and said, well, he said, your core is pretty much junk. He said, you're going to need a new core. And I said, well, looked around, new radiators were like $450. He said, $495 back to me. I said, okay, fine, just go ahead and do it. I know it's the right radiator, worked before, plus it's got the IH tag on here. New ones don't have the IH tag on there, so trying to keep it somewhat original. And in the back of the truck I put a little dent in the fins, but I mean, other than that, it's a brand new radiator pretty much. Got it bolted down, it's ready to go. Got my new fan blade installed. I don't know if those have been watching my original fan blade, it was on it. This little airplane propeller here. I don't know what happened to the other two, but so I got my good fan blade on it now. The only thing I'm worried about is this isn't the right generator, and somebody had shimmed it up right here with washers. The only problem is when this fan blade goes around, I don't know if you can see how close it is to the front of my generator, but that's only about 1/8 of an inch away from the front of my generator, so I think I'm probably going to fix that because I don't like that the way it is. You can see the bracket too is leaning forward, so generator's in the wrong spot. I'm going to try and fix that. I got some original paint here on my intake manifold. I cleaned all this up. Found out my air restrictor valve, which is supposed to be loose, is rusted fast, but for now it'll work. What else? Something else I figured out when I ripped all this apart. I can't remember what it was now. Can't remember. Something. Oh, I know. Behind my flywheel here, there's the little bolts that hold this backing plate to the back of the engine here. I put my new flywheel on, or I shouldn't say, the flywheel back on. I went to make this back up the back of my engine, and I looked in and lined these bolts up with the holes, and looked in and I thought, what in the world, there's bolts touching the back of my flywheel. And so I pulled this back off and realized that the bolts behind the flywheel holding this plate on had backed out, and they were touching the back of my flywheel. There's 3 of them that were loose, and 2 of them were touching the back of my flywheel. So whether they vibrated loose, whether somebody just forgot to tighten them and they just worked their ways out, I don't know. But all I know is I had to rip my flywheel back off again, tighten them up. I Loctite them this time, make sure that those butters weren't going to come out. Put my flywheel back on. So I guess that was my fault for not catching them when I put the flywheel on the first time. But anyway, back to here. This would be together, but last night, about 1 a.m., trying to make this back up with this, and it was going good. Everything was lined up perfect. And then I started tightening the bolts here, and I heard a big snap. And I thought maybe something just fell in line, like that PTO coupler or something like that. And a friend came over and said, hey, you got some pieces of metal laying in the bottom of your transmission. I don't know if they're supposed to be there or not. And I'm like, well, I just rebuilt this transmission, so there should not be any pieces of metal laying in the bottom of my transmission. Shoved the magnet down in there, and I found these babies. Pulled it back up out, and I immediately knew what it was off of. So we worked and worked and worked trying to get this bearing off of there, and because it's recessed in there, you can't do it. So to pull the top transmission back off, pull the shaft out, pull the bearing, and this is what happened. Apparently, because it's such a tight fit into there that it just was off just a hair, it caught these 3 bottom rollers, busted them off. But I mean, it's hard to tell. But it busted the cage right here, and actually busted a piece out of the inner race right. You don't know if you can see it right there or not, but it busted a piece out of the inner race. So this bearing cost me $78, and actually the most expensive bearing for this tractor. And I didn't get the tractor together yet, but I have to really play with it to get it to go in there straight. So it'll actually go in there. So it's going to be very interesting getting these 2 halves back together. Antique show starts this Thursday. And I'm working hot and heavy on it, and I'm not sure I'm going to get this thing done, considering I'm working around school right now, too. I got a bunch of late nights at school this week. So this is going to be very interesting to see whether I can get this together or not. But I mean, for the most part, if that bearing wouldn't have broke, it probably would have been pretty far along. I'm going to call our dealership right after PT tomorrow morning, see if they had it. If they do got it, I got about an hour drive to the dealership for another $78 bearing that I hope I don't break again. But other than that, I think that's about it. Injector pump's timed, because when I pulled it out, I didn't put it back in timing up. So injector pump's timed. Hydraulic pump was all cleaned up. I cleaned the inside out, got rid of all the milkshake out of the inside. New O-rings on here. That's ready to go. I really think that's about it. I got all my new hydraulic hoses here. Starters back from the electric shop. $100 for a starter rebuild, solenoid drive, and bushings. And then $50 for a new battery cable laying right there. And I think that's pretty much it for now. So I got a little bit to do on the battery box yet, just to patch it up so it'll hold the battery. But other than that, pretty much ready to just throw this thing together, and hopefully it runs when I'm done. That's the main goal, that it runs. So alrighty, well, thanks to everybody watching and has kept up with this project. I really appreciate it, and watch here in the next couple days for hopefully some progress, unless something else goes wrong. So thanks for watching.